All right. We're gonna do it the scanner way. I'm gonna suck your brain dry.
Hey, how's it going, universe? Welcome back to Zoobox Goes to the Movies. And today, I'm joined with returning guest Dan Proffit. How's it going, Dan?
Cheers, Shaun. Salute, Laheim, to everybody out there.
Yo, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about. I don't know if it was like Oh, you're good. I don't know if it was like a favorite movie of mine. It's a movie I've always liked. It's a movie that I've been meaning to kind of revisit for a while. And when Dan sent me, he had a list of movies that like he wanted to talk to me about, and Scanners was on there, and I got kind of excited. It had been a while since I'd watched Scanners, and so we're gonna David Cronenberg's 1981 film Scanners, directed by David Cronenberg, written by David Cronenberg, stars Jennifer O'Neill, Stephen Lack, Patrick McGoohan. If you don't know who Patrick McGoohan is, that's Edward the Longshanks from Braveheart. And our boy, Michael Ironside. We're actually going to talk about a movie with Michael Ironside because no matter what, I think even the first episode we did about Glengarry Glen Ross, I think we mentioned Michael Ironside. So it's always nice when we can actually talk about a Michael Ironside performance.
Well, we talked about Starship Troopers.
Yes, no, we got one in. And there's so many others. So we're going to have to do the next Karate Kid. Do you remember that? He's the bad guy in the is it the fourth Karate Kid movie? So Dan, what was your impetus for wanting to like put this on the list? Like, is it just have you been like a lifelong fan of Scanners, or?
I discovered it truly when I was a teenager. I just knew it was a movie that you would really dig, and it's a movie that I think we could appreciate mutually.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, when my brain started grouping the cluster of movies that I would really like to talk about with you specifically as a person, Scanners popped up, and I'm a real big fan of like good ideas really sometimes are the ones that just come to mind first. Like the things that come to mind naturally, a lot of the times come to mind first for the right reason.
Yeah.
And, so I just like to say, if I'm going to do something, make a list, bang it out. And when I thought of the movies that I wanted to discuss with Shaun, Scanners was on there because it's a funky movie. And,
yeah.
But, the first time I had ever heard about Scanners was in Wayne's World when I was a kid.
Really?
For many years, Scanners was nothing to me but a joke in Wayne's World where Garth is like, he's like zoning out looking into the camera, and the guy makes the joke about the guy's head exploding in Scanners. It's just a one-liner to me, like something in Ace Ventura or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I was a teenager, like you, and actually you were discussing this in one of the recent episodes about how one of your weekend things was to go to the video store and get some movies and, hang out and watch them. And then, how your group of friends was always really into movies. I think that's one of the reasons that we bonded, even though we didn't even go to the same high school or anything. We became friends just because our whole group of friends was really into, artistic stuff and films. And we watched, like you were talking about Fallen, which, I was right there with you as a teenager for Fallen. Who's Azazel? Like,
Oh yeah, I know.
But Scanners came from that same time for me when I was in my late teens and discovering all kinds of looking at movies that I had always heard about as pop culture references that were then just sitting there on the shelf, and I could go as a teenager. I had a job. I could rent them if I wanted to. I could buy them if I wanted to. And I was like, oh, Scanners. That's one that I could throw in the cart and take 6 or 7 movies for the weekend and hang out with my friends or just sit alone and watch some movies. And it was one that really spoke to me as a teenager just because it was so damn cool.
Yeah, it is. It is just kind of we'll get into the specifics of it watching it as older, more mature men, but like more thoughtful people maybe. But it is kind of just on its face is cool. It has a cool aesthetic. It has like, if you were into science fiction in any degree, you're just like, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense right out of the gate. As soon as you hear that Howard Shore score,
oh yeah,
with the green computer, and just like it sets that sterile 80s. I mean, for the time it was high budget, but like low budget.
Well, it's like it's
Smack
almost like
the synthesizer.
it's like almost the one of the progenitors of this aesthetic. Like, before I saw Scanners, I saw probably 50 movies that were inspired by Scanners. So by the time I even get to Scanners in my early 20s, like I'm already like familiar with it. Kind of had like a weird thing with it, but it's like just like the color schemes and kind of the monochrome flat nature of the photography and the way the actors were. There are so many things that copied that going forward. I mean, because I'm trying to think of something like before this that really has that same kind of vibe. Because Cronenberg almost like reinvented taking science fiction seriously, like because he does it all so straight.
Right.
Like a lot of people would always wink at you or do whatever. He's like, nah, like this is very serious. No matter how silly it gets, it's very serious.
Extremely serious, and it gets very silly too.
Yeah. You're like scanning a computer because it has a nervous system.
Yeah, they repeat that line over and over again, that a computer has a nervous system. And, I guess as a kid who like may have accidentally eaten mushrooms on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I was like, yeah. Man, I'm going to take that for face value. Like,
look at it, it's got wires, man. It's got wires, and it's got chips. That's like the brain. That's like the heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hearing that line as a 35-year-old man, I was like, wait a second, you're a doctor. Like, you're a doctor, a scientist.
Yeah.
Prove that to me.
Well, do you know anything about the production history of Scanners?
Actually, I mean, I was looking for more of it, but like I told you, I couldn't find a lot of stuff. But for one of the things that I found was that it was like really underwritten. Like they were writing it basically as they were going along.
So the Canadian government funds their art programs and movies and stuff like that in Canada. They've always had kind of a wing of the government that's been involved in that, and they approached Cronenberg, who had just gotten done with the movie The Brood. So he does this right after The Brood. And they're like, hey, do you have a movie you want to make? And he's like, yeah, because why would he say no? He didn't really, but he was like, yeah, of course. He's like, okay, well, you start in 2 weeks and you got to have it done in 6 weeks. Because it was a tax thing. They had to get it done before a quarter. So they had to get principal photography done. So they go and make a movie, and they're writing it as they're doing it, and then he has to steal money to get reshoots, which is actually going in and backfilling the story because he knew that his movie didn't make any sense. So, and I think when you watch the movie with that knowledge, and now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like,
it makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that I always sort of subconsciously understood about the movie is that the middle part of it doesn't exist. Like, there's no middle part of the movie. It's kind of a continual rehash of the same chase scene.
mm-hmm.
We're going to sit here and meditate until people come in and shoot us with shotguns, and then we're going to move to the next place. And until he finds Kim Obrist, it is it's weird, because some of my favorite scenes are during those sequences, but at the same time, the movie really totally meanders through the middle part of it. And for a long time, I had to keep rewatching it because I kept like kind of forgetting what happened in the movie. I remember the beginning very strongly, the first like 45 minutes, and then like the very end, like the last 20 minutes of that final confrontation, which is incredible. But I kept finding myself kind of forgetting what was happening there in the middle, especially with things like the death of Paul Ruth. Like, I had to watch the movie a couple of times before I really remembered exactly what was going on in those scenes, because like you said, there's no thread connecting them all together, really.
No, it feels like, I'm glad you said that, because I felt the same way, because I was just like, this really doesn't make any sense. There's no rules established for anything, so there's no way to kind of build or grow towards anything. And it's, you could make the argument that it's all for Cameron Vale's character, Stephen Lack, who plays Cameron Gale, like his journey of discovery. What does it mean to be a scanner?
Right.
But none of it really plays, because the audience has no idea. He's not a very good actor. He's great in when he shuts the fuck up. When he doesn't have to speak, he has the perfect face. He's like innocent and naive, but as soon as he has to open his mouth, I'm glad he's dead. He was a bastard.
Especially as you were mentioning before we started the call with the canned ADR that is all over this fucking movie.
Which there's a post-production reason for that is because like Cronenberg was rewriting dialogue. He discovered that when you do a shot reverse shot, that if somebody's off camera, he can change the dialogue.
Right.
That was why.
And all of this shows up on screen, even though like when you're 17, you're really more paying attention to the exploding heads and the car chase sequences, and all the action in the movie is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
And so well done for the time. I mean, I guess somewhere I found the number that the budget for the movie at the time was $4 million. They spent every single one of those millions of dollars on Michael Ironside and a bunch of exploding heads.
Well, you would think so. Michael Ironside was actually paid scale plus 10, so he made $5,300 for this movie.
Well, I think they probably had to pay extra on like a tax credit later for when he became known for being more awesome. But the middle of the movie, man, that's one of the things that has, now that I've come to understand the movie, it's like, okay, I get that, it makes sense now that you told me that it was like, part of a Canadian government grant thing where he probably, like, I've been part of these grant competitions where people just come in and like have an idea about something. And sometimes it's kind of cool and sometimes it sticks. And when you walk in and tell people, you give the pitch like, I want to do like a darker modern horror movie with telepathy presented in such a way that some of these people can't control it, and they're blowing up people's heads. Very good prosthetics. It's going to be a great horror movie. And then the government's just like, yeah, kid, we got a little grant for you. Here you go, make your movie. And then David Cronenberg's like, oh shit, now I got to make this movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what happened. Because, I mean, you're in a position, you're a filmmaker, somebody's going to give you $4 million. Of course you're going to say yes. No matter what, you're going to say yes. I don't think there's a world where any of us in any endeavor would say no to that. Like, if it would able, like, make it for us to be able to kind of pursue something like that, a creative dream or whatever. Like, of course. I remember, like, think if I was in a band and somebody came up to me back in the band days, and somebody came up to be like, hey, man, you want to cut like a 10-song album? I'd be like, of course. Even whether or not I had 10 songs, I'd figure it out.
If somebody came to us like now, like today, tonight,
Yeah.
and was, yeah, we have $4 million and you have 6 weeks to make a movie, 2 weeks of pre-production, 6 weeks of production. You and I would be like, yeah, we're going to do that. I'd have to tell people that their hogs are going to have to wait, and that sucks. It's going to create a backlog of work for me on the Butcher Pete's end, but we would take that $4 million and we would make some fucking movie.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is still even as an adult man, I'm still like in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm going to make one. I'm going to do one. I don't care if it's in my backyard with a fucking Canon, my Canon Rebel. I was like, it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, I really think you're selling yourself short when you have the saddest man in the world.
It's a beautiful film.
Yeah. Don't act like that never happened.
Yeah, so I could say like continuing my filmography. I don't need to say become a filmmaker. I am a filmmaker. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think, going back to like when we were young and what kind of like first attracted us to the movie, like what really I respond to is the aesthetic of the movie, and the music. The score is incredible. Like I've always liked the score, but when I watched it this time, I was like, holy shit, this is like an all-timer. And then I found that vinyl. Dan sent me a message. He's like, there's a vinyl for Scanners, and I was like, I know, I saw it because sometimes I think Dan and I have like parallel thoughts. Because when you messaged me, I was like, oh shit, like we're on exactly the same page with Scanners at our age. But just like and I kind of like Cronenberg. Are you a fan of Cronenberg beyond this? Do you like kind of like The Fly?
Oh, I love The Fly, but it was a movie. The Fly is a movie. Actually, somebody commented. One of my friends from growing up commented that he would like, well, not necessarily that he would like to see us do it, but that I should watch The Fly. And then I was like, fuck it, we should do one day down the line we'll do a Zoo Box on The Fly. But I used to love that movie when I was a kid, but I haven't watched it as an adult. I just remember Jeff Goldblum like walking around getting fingernails falling off and shit and being like, wow. But I'm a fan. I think I'm a fan of David Cronenberg. What other movies has he done?
Well, he did this. He did The Brood. He did The Fly. Those are kind of his main. Yeah, more recently, A History of Violence a few years ago, Dead Ringers, Existence,
Oh, okay, yeah, I
uh,
gotcha.
Naked Lunch, The Dead
Okay,
Zone, Videodrome.
mostly my appreciation for David Cronenberg is going to come from this and The Fly. But you're right.
Oh, dude, you've never seen Videodrome?
No,
Oh, damn. Videodrome is the one. Like if I were to say, if somebody were to be like, "Yo, well, for you it would be the one. Like, which Cronenberg movie should I watch?" I'd be like, Videodrome with
okay.
James Woods, with Jimmy Woods,
Oh wow.
and fucking what's her name from Blondie.
But yeah, I mean, this movie, you're right. It has a very particular aesthetic, as you had mentioned earlier. Everything is flat. The acting is flat. The architecture of all the buildings that they choose is flat. Sort of even the costuming is all very angular, and everything has like a very.
It's serious. It's like
Yeah,
monochrome and serious, and be like, take this seriously,
it takes
okay?
itself very seriously, but also we're gonna like blow up a latex head with a shotgun blast and like
Well,
bits of everywhere.
I think that's why you have to set the tone of seriousness, because the story you're telling is ludicrous. Like, it's so out there. So if you can ground it in this like really intense reality, I think that is, if anything works in the movie, it is that tone. It sets this perfect tone of. I think the only thing that falls short is the explanations. When they try to explain things, they don't do a very good job. It's probably, if you really only understand the movie once you've seen it like 4 times.
Right.
So if I think that if there was more clarity, especially in the third act, without just like Michael Ironside monologuing for 10 minutes, doing his James Bond villain monologue,
Which is great. Way.
which is great. Honestly, maybe it's worth it just for that. But I think the tone he sets this thing where you never think twice about like the crazy shit that's happening. You don't think twice about the fact that this guy's head explodes, and Michael Ironside sitting. One of my favorite moments of Michael Ironside is when he's sitting in the back of the car after they think they've put the ephemeral in him after he blows the dude's head up in the beginning of the movie, and he's just got this like mischievous look.
Yes.
He's like a little kid in the back of the car, just like controlling everybody, doing that weird mouth thing where he's like.
Yeah.
That duck lips.
And you can hear the weird, strange sort of rattlesnake sound in the background of him, the sound effects of them controlling people subtly. If you're listening, and as I said, I might have accidentally eaten a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that might have had a fungus on it and made me hear certain sounds when I was a teenager that kind of reminded me of the weird sounds I heard in this movie. And so the sound effects are really far out, and that whole sequence, leveled against a movie that's so uneven in terms of its story, that sequence is shot so fucking beautifully.
Yeah.
The whole thing is terrifying. The canned ADR in it, the voice work with the guys screaming at each other desperately and losing control of the situation, as the sound of the scan builds and builds and builds in the background. And then there's that moment that I wrote. What did I write? Ironside conducts his symphony of death. Perfect pan change of focus when it pans up from the guy's gun, and then you see that it's actually the agent that's killing the other agents, and then Michael Ironside steps in behind him and does this weird twist of the face where he moves his head like this just as the guy lifts up the gun, and like they pantomimed everything so well.
Yeah.
And then as the guy takes his life and shoots himself, Michael Ironside gives the absolute tiniest little grin.
Yes.
Just a perfect little sequence. And then it's like, so, he puts so much work into framing these like really wonderfully shot sequences that look fantastic. But if you're watching it with any sort of critical eye, you're like, yeah, they had no fucking idea where the story was going at any point, except the beginning and the very end.
Yeah, the story is really, it's hard to follow the actual particulars of the story, what's going on. Like, you could probably watch this and not even realize it's like about corporations versus like government entities, and like you wouldn't know that like if you don't like really pay attention.
Yeah,
I mean, imagine trying to figure out what the RIPE program even is the first time you watch this movie. They do such a bad job communicating that until somebody just says it. Like, It's a what's a Obrist, Kim Obrist. She's like when they go to the doctor's office because he's on the list of the people that get the ephemeral deliveries, and she gets scanned by a baby, a fetus scans her, and they're like, "Oh, that must mean," and they just explain it to you, like
And there's directly after that. They waste so much time in the movie looking and looking for Daryl Revick, looking and looking for him, trying to track him down, and then they never get a payoff moment because as soon as they walk out of that doctor's office where she gets scanned, they get shot with a dart and taken into his secret lair.
Yeah.
The fuck did we just spend the last 45 minutes chasing him around for? They could have been spending that time establishing the rules better, like you said, or bringing the world, doing better hinting at the larger story than Dr. Ruth like losing his mind in a hallway and then getting shot while he talks to himself.
Well, this I had a question about that. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but folks, I hope you've seen Scanners. If you've seen Scanners, this will be a fun conversation. But the thing with Dr. Ruth, I was watching it and I'm like, is somebody talking to him, like in his head, or is he like just having some out of nowhere like mental collapse? Like, is Kim talking to him, or is Revick? I thought when I watched it, I was like, oh, is Revick talking to him? Because he's having a discussion where he's disagreeing with somebody or disagreeing with himself.
That right there is probably the best read of the situation that I've ever thought about or heard, because it's never made any sense to me why this guy who's so calculated and such a cunning son of a bitch and who's been doing this for the last like 35 years or more, all of a sudden just like snaps and loses his mind, starts talking to himself in his head, outside of his head, and then just sits there as he gets shot. And it makes like an interesting, weird, dramatic sequence, especially when he like covers his ears and like gets blown away. But none of it makes any fucking sense, and you can tell that they were just like, we gotta bring these characters towards some kind of end here. Whereas, for all the shitty sequels to this movie that were made that I've never seen, they could have actually made a movie that continued Cameron Vale's and Daryl Revick's story.
Yes.
Kept the Doctor alive and made him more than just, he ends up just being a mustache twirler.
He ends up that way, which is a shame because I think what's his name, Patrick McGool.
He's an incredible job in this movie.
Yeah, Patrick McGowan. I want to get his name right. Patrick McGowan, who is a great actor. He was kind of more of a television guy. The Prisoner from the '60s. He was the star of that show. But he is.
We'll hit that troops too.
But he's so good in this, and this is another one of these Cronenberg things where he'll get like one great actor who just like grounds everything. He did this. I know you haven't seen it, but the movie he did this before this was The Brood, and he got Oliver Reed to play like a psychologist who's like a main fixture in the story, and it's just like elevates the material. This is the same thing where it's like because of the way they frame the story with him being one of the first people who even has like real dialogue, like it just grounds everything. You suddenly start taking it seriously because he brings such a weight to him. But apparently he fucking hated working on this movie. He had no idea what it was about. He couldn't make heads or tails. He was like, how am I supposed to act if I don't even know what I'm talking about?
Well, he pulled a full-on Patrick Stewart in Star Trek The Next Generation, where it was like, I'm surrounded by people in like latex heads, and I'm going to act the fuck out of this and give it like Shakespearean weight. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine that during the production of this movie, more than a few people didn't know what the fuck was going on.
I think most of the cast didn't actually know what was going on or what they were really feeling. They had like a general idea. It's like a concept. It's like almost probably felt like a vignette piece, like a tone piece when they're doing principal photography.
It opens up, it could have had a great sequel. It could have had a Scanners 2 that was like incredible.
Yeah, not one that was like directly video.
Fleshed it out and took the time to write the story out, but then approach it with the exact same aesthetic and expand the world, make that flat dystopian, grim kind of, like you said, monotone world, and expand it and expand on Dr. Ruth's world and where he came from with the ephemeral and the fucked up shit that he did to his wife and kids.
Which is actually, it's funny. While doing research, I found out this is a pull from a real thing that happened in the 50s. Not that it made people psychic, obviously, but there was a kind of stress relief drug that was for pregnant women. It was called thalidomide. And what it did was it ended up, they gave it to a bunch of women, and all their kids were born with like birth defects, deformity, short arms. So that's where David Cronenberg actually, like, the plan of the idea, because he actually wrote a treatment for this in like 1976. So he had like a general idea what he wanted to do, called Telepathy 2000, which is like a Roger Corman movie title, like Death Race 2000 or something. But Scanner is maybe a little bit better. But I actually think they even shot it under the title Telepathy 2000.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's why I needed a sequel, because that concept is, the concept of the fallen telepaths who can't control their power, and they're trying to form this underground and blah, blah. That's really fucking cool. But the whole backstory with the ephemeral and the testing on the pregnant women and everything, that's a much more compelling story. In fact, that's how I roped Caitlin into almost watching this. I told her, well, this is it's a crazy horror story from the 80s, and it's about this doctor who, because Caitlin is very into medicine, and she's really into scaring herself, reading horror stories about how fucked up the entire medical industry has been for its entire existence.
Yeah, the history of it.
Yeah, and I said, this is it's a crazy horror movie about the way they, tested on mothers, and they created these psychic babies and stuff. And she was like, oh, okay, we'll watch that. 20 minutes in, people's heads are exploding, people getting mind controlled like parasite bees and shit. And there's this weird like synthesizer score blaring and shit. And she said, is this the way the whole movie's going to be?
Like, no.
She was like, when do they talk about the doctors and the testing and stuff? I'm like, oh, that comes in like the last 10 minutes and like a monologue right before they like explode each other with fire and melt each other.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's, I mean, I understand it being at the end of the movie like it is, but I do agree. I wish that we had gotten, and I don't feel like this often, because most of the time I'm like, no, it's okay for me not to need to know. I get the gist. I got the idea. I think you could make the argument for the Scanners as well, but I would have liked to have seen this explored a little bit further. Actually, I think this would make for a perfect television show. Honestly, it would. Just the setup of Scanners hunting Scanners already is like that's TV.
Evergreen right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you had gotten $12 million or $20 million, I mean, in those days that would have been a lot, maybe $10 million for a sequel where they actually took a year to write it and a year to film it and edit it and put some time into it and do, something like with, of course, it's impossible to hold to a standard like this, but like what James Cameron did with Terminator 2, where it's like, yeah, I had this crazy, scary little 80s horror sci-fi movie, but then I took that seed and I turned it into something really incredible. I think this totally been that. I don't know why David Cronenberg didn't stick with it. I don't know why they let the franchise go into like B-movie direct-to-video bullshit.
Yeah,
Scanner Cop? Like, what the fuck?
I know, I found out about Scanner Cop and like Scanner Cop Returns or Scanner the Takedown or something. It was the sequel to that. So there's like two direct sequels. There's Scanners 2, A New World Order, and then Scanners 2, 3, something else, A World Domination.
They don't concern any of the characters that... I mean,
no, I think they're mentioned in passing.
What happened to Cameron Vale? What happened to Daryl Revick inside of Cameron Vale? That could have been such a compelling story with him having to fight that and having like Michael Ironside inside his head and to find out more about his father.
Which is crazy because this was a very successful movie, actually. This was David Cronenberg's most successful movie up to this point in his career. And the most accessible. It made a ton of money. Like, he got super famous because of Scanners. Scanners opened up the doors for everything else he did in his career, basically, because he couldn't get very much respect because he made these like weird little horror movies, these weird like little psychosexual horror movies. Like, up to this point, he had done like one called Shivers about these parasites that literally jump into your body and like make you into like a weird horny murderer. And then he made this movie called Rabid, which is about people kind of getting this like zombie rabies, kind of like a precursor to something like 28 Days Later. And then he did The Brood, which is like Jungian psychosexual shadow self, like inner needs being manifested and creating these little monsters that go out and kill people that have wronged you and because you were trying to protect your family. Like it's a wild movie. Definitely, you should check out The Breed, or The Brood, rather. The Brood. If you ever get a chance, keep it in the back of your mind.
I'll have to enjoy it and like it because it shares the split vinyl soundtrack with Scanners, so I'm going to
Oh, yeah.
enjoy it because I'm definitely going to spend the probably $65 or $70
I know.
to buy myself this Christmas off of eBay.
I know. You know, I had a chance to buy it when it first came out, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I just kept going. You know, because I just didn't, I don't know why.
Always buy it when it first comes out, dude.
Because it's $30. So it was like 20 or maybe $25. Fucking vinyls are, I love vinyls. We'll have to talk about that someday. Vinyls actually are, I think, are amazing because it makes you listen to albums again.
Yes.
Instead of fucking playlists, like some sort of.
In our house, we do have a playlist that we keep adding songs to so that we can keep things fresh. But I do have a lot of vinyl, and we keep plucking through new ones, and it's really great to put a vinyl on the platter. And Theo loves it too. He sees the needle hit, he hears the crackle, he gets a big smile, he kind of leans in to hear what's it gonna be. And, you never lose that anticipation when you put on a vinyl. But yeah, man, I would love to listen to this soundtrack on vinyl. It's perfect for it. It's got that huge analog synth sound, and Howard Shore just knocked it out of the park. Speaking of Howard Shore, one of the records I listened to with Theo is the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. We have the extended LPs. It's like 16 vinyl or something with all.
No
the
shit.
And Theo is named after Theoden, so we like to listen to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack a little bit. But anyway, back to Scanners. What the fuck else more is there to say about Scanners? It's a fucking great movie. No, there's more to say about it. But
well, I think Cronenberg's just to bring up something, and specifically, like some of his visual acuity is incredible. Like we talked about, like his blocking and his framing, and how he does kind of those big dramatic, almost operatic moments, like with Revik killing all those dudes when they're trying to take him to prison, or not prison, but wherever they're going to hold them. Consec, that's right. The scene where when you find out that he's got his lackeys, he's got his little gang, and when he's like exerting control over them, when he's just like standing in the shadows, it's like this very almost noir movie moment, and they do the dissolves between his face and their faces. I love that, man. I know maybe it's like a cheap gimmicky thing, but it's like obviously a guy working on a budget. Be like, how the fuck do I like make people know that he's controlling their minds? Yeah. And he's just, and you just get it. Like you're like, oh, I understand. Oh, cool.
It totally works, man. And maybe there's a part of me that's nostalgic and wants to, be 17 in my parents' basement listening to a Tangerine Dream record, and with my stack of Video Headquarters DVDs and VHSs. But something about this movie that doesn't have any wheels on it totally works. And I think that's its power, is in the aesthetic, in the vision of the horror, and what it kind of wanted to express in the anxiety of not being able to control yourself from inside yourself, somebody else being inside you, controlling everything. You can't control your heartbeat. I mean, you can never control your heartbeat anyway, but now there's somebody inside of you controlling your heartbeat, and they're making it go faster.
Well, that's one of the things like about them never establishing kind of the rules of what a scanner can actually do. It feels like it's just a mechanical notion of the plot at some point, because like whatever they need to do to get the plot to go forward, a scanner can do. Right. Like so there's never any tension built. We don't know what they can and can't do, so there's never any like kind of scenes where we as the audience kind of have an understanding, and they're going to be put up against something that's going to be hard for them. We never know that. I mean, right. Suddenly they can jump into people's fucking minds, like, or take them over. Like that's an end of movie reveal. Like that is even happening. Is there even a notion that can happen before that?
No, it's before that. It seems like more of a parasitic thing, but also, I mean, you could say that it's because Daryl Revick and Cameron Vale are the most powerful scanners. They're the only ones who have seemed to actually been able to exert that ability. Other scanners can read people's minds and sort of mind meld the people, but I don't know if they have that sort of mind control that Revick and Vale have. But you're right, the rules aren't clearly defined. That was one of the things in the 20 minutes of the movie that Caitlin watched. She pointed out, she said, one of the scenes that I love the most is when Vale is strapped to the bed and everyone's walking into the room one by one, and it's bubbling inside of his head, one voice after the other, until it's just this ocean of murmuring driving him fucking out of his mind. But Caitlin pointed out when that scene came on, well, wait, he was just in the mall, surrounded by people, eating a hot dog and smoking a cigarette off of somebody's table. Why was it only that one person that his mind got connected to? And I was like, I don't know. I think Cameron Vale read the script.
Yeah.
That's to steal what is that from Cinema Sins? That's the best explanation that I have, is that either these people read the script or there actually was no script and they were just rolling with it. But it's I'm happy enough to rewatch it as it moves from set piece to set piece, looking cool, sounding cool, and having cool special effects. I mean, the special effects are fucking great.
Yeah. The special effects are amazing, and they're revolutionary for the time. I mean, the face bladders. So for the ending scene between Ironside and Stephen Lack, when they're scanner
is gruesome and terrifying to this day.
Yeah, that was the first time that had ever been done. And actually, the guy who did the makeup for it, this old, I think French guy, he was also working on this other movie, Altered States. Have you ever seen Altered States?
I know it was one of those video headquarters movies, but I don't know if I probably rented it and didn't watch it because I remember the box.
The box with him sitting, was it William Hurt? Well, that was being made at the same time, and apparently they had a production problem, so this guy comes over to work on scanners for a couple weeks, and he just does this out of nowhere. Nobody knows that this is what it's gonna be. David Cronenberg shot a different ending, where it was Cameron's head gets set on fire. If you see stills of the movie, a lot of times it's the alternate ending. There's sparks and fire coming out of Cameron's head instead of all the face bleeding in the veins, and that's actually wasn't in the original ending. It was a much more kind of straightforward, I'm gonna suck your brains out, Cameron, and just setting his face on fire. Because they had kind of established in the movie that there's some sort of kinetic energy to what they do. That's why all the cars explode. That's why when Cameron scans the nervous system of the computer, the phone melts in his hand. So they had kind of
notes that there was so much gratuitous explosion in this movie that literally a phone booth, which has no explosive components whatsoever, gets set on fire and explodes like a napalm bomb or something.
Yeah, I actually wrote "All cars explode. It's just science."
Yeah. It's because that they got in touch with the nervous system of the car and they set it on fire.
Yeah, I know. That's where it kind of goes, well, I guess the movie kind of goes off the rails. Does it go off the rails immediately, or is it once it reveals answers?
Isn't that what's great about this movie? It doesn't even fucking have any rails to where we're going. Do we need any roads with this fucking shit? And that's the thing, is that a sequel, a more mature sequel, could have had rails. It could have had a little more weight. But this, it didn't really need it. Dude, I'm still watching this movie 16 years after I saw it the first time? 36 now? No, I'm still watching it 18 years after I saw it the first time and enjoying it. There were things about it that I enjoyed, more than I had, not paid attention to before when I watched it this time. And there's also, now that you watch it with a more critical eye, you can understand why it didn't make sense to you as much the first few times you watched it. Oh, okay. This is why it kind of seemed like gibberish in my head the first few times I watched it. Yeah. So you immediately understand that, but also why you're drawn back to watching it, because it's good. It's easy on the eyes, man.
No, it is. It's an infinitely watchable movie for anybody that's into kind of genre stuff. I think for me, I just always go back just the way it feels and looks. I just love that score, the cinematography, even the performances. I don't know if it's nostalgia or it's just there's a kitschy thing to it where it just kind of works for scanners. Like Stephen Lack's performance as Cameron Vale does not work in any other movie, but it works in Scanners.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Because
because he
everything
is.
said is flat and everything is sterile and angular, and so that performance works. But also, in the sense that he has been a social misfit, and this person wouldn't exactly have the best social skills. He can kind of
What?
pull it in that sense. But you're right. I mean, this person, especially with the ADR, oh boy,
Well,
his performance is pretty stiff.
if I did have to defend his performance, I would have gone in the same direction you just did. I would have been like, oh, well, he's kind of autistic. Like, not in a negative or pejorative way. I'm just like, he's kind of an autistic guy. Like, he doesn't have any social skills. Like, his emotional response is, like, delayed. He doesn't understand, like, basic to basic human interaction. And maybe that's another problem in the movie. Is, like, we don't actually know much about Cameron other than he was a bum.
Right.
Like, that's really all we know. Like, what happened to Cameron, like throughout his life? And then they make overtures that, well, Dr. Ruth knew where you were. Now he just pulled you out when he needed to get to me.
He wanted to get you off ice until you were ready. and yeah, it's like that stuff is perfect fodder for a sequel. Why not hire the guy for a sequel? Why not hire Michael Ironside for a sequel? And explore all this shit a little bit more. You could shoot a lot of flashbacks and have Dr. Paul Ruth coming in. Because, why don't you want to have more Dr. Paul Ruth on the screen with that buttery English accent or Scottish accent or whatever he's got? And, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that serves this movie best is that all that backstory is so often when it's revealed that a character is somebody's brother or father or mother or whatever. I mean, it's not always The Empire Strikes Back. Usually it's pretty fucking hokey. But in this, it really serves the plot in that, Paul Ruth was a fucking psychopath scientist, and he used his wife in an experiment and created these fucking children that got out of control, and he didn't know what the fuck to do about it, and he desperately joined this organization, Consec, who was constantly against him, and he was just, the world is this big fucking experiment for Dr. Ruth. I mean, he reminds me of these, tenured professors who sit around smelling each other's farts for 35 years and
everything's
laurels of some kind of advancement that they made when they were kids or whatever, coming right out of school. And yeah, man, he's a scumbag. I mean, motherfucker, especially now that I have a son, would I let him live on the streets for 20 years because of my weird, twisted experiment?
I think if you were to make this more like, if you were to have made this, maybe if you had done this today, or maybe if you were smarter, you find out that, like, Dr. Ruth is a villain at the end of the second act, right? Because you need to have some sort of dramatic pull. That's another thing with the movie. The movie is very dramatically inert. Like, there is, because you find out all of these things so late in the game that, yeah, it can recontextualize things on a repeat viewing, but if you were just to, like, look at it as an experience, watching a story unfold, it's, like, too late by the time you're told this information. Like, you've wasted all of this time with these characters and building up towards this. And I would say, even in hindsight, I don't think that was the intention. I think that was an after thing. Because if you just watch what's going on, it does not seem like that is what was intended up until you're told that it's intended, or that was the intention. I mean, I could be misreading that myself, but I don't know.
No, it suffers from Fallout New Vegas syndrome, where it's a lot of you have thing, go find other character, talk to other character, get name of other character to go talk to, find other thing, and then after a bunch of chasing, you get to kind of an unsatisfying ending. That stuff could have been dropped along the way like kibble, and it would have made the movie make more sense, and it would have made it a more enjoyable experience. I mean, obviously the movie doesn't necessarily need to be perfect in a narrative sense because it carries itself so well stylistically, but my God, it could have been, again, this is why I say it could have had a great sequel, because I think that in a way the movie's fucking perfect the way it is. It's just like,
fair enough.
It's a snapshot of, like, an artist having a really, really particular vision, but not exactly having enough substance to fluff it out. But he still pulls it off, and he still gets people to love it, and still back to it over and over again. So why not go back and have Scanners 2 that's like 2.5 hours long and really takes itself just as seriously or more, total missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the barrier to that would have been Cronenberg himself. I don't think Cronenberg has much interest in like repeating himself.
And
He's just that kind of guy.
as a person who wrote a rock song and then wrote a sequel to that rock song in the vein of like Twist Again and Unforgiven 2.
I was gonna say Unforgiven and Unforgiven 2.
Unforgiven 3, which they finally came out with.
Yeah.
I appreciate and relishing in your own sequels. I mean, sometimes you do something that's really awesome and it's kind of ripe for more exploration. There's nothing kitschy or sellout about that, but I can see somebody like David Cronenberg being fucking, I don't want to, why would I revisit a world that I explored so thoroughly or something?
Well, actually, you know what's funny? David Cronenberg, when you watch interviews, he's just like a regular Canadian dude. And he's just kind of like excited to be there. Like people have like this, you would think he's like some sort of dark, brooding, deeply intellectual character.
Yeah,
But no,
I'm envisioning him like Morrissey, but with a camera.
Not quite. No, he's just kind of like I mean, obviously a very smart, very thoughtful dude, but he's just like kind of like just excited. Like I was watching this old interview with him like right after he made Scanners. He's like, yeah, Scanners did really well. It's really exciting. Yeah, they're going to let me go be part of the Canadian Film Commission. This is really great.
You'll eat a bratwurst and have a beer.
Yeah, well, he's just one of these assholes that's just like, I never even knew I could make a movie. I just kind of stumbled into it. You're like, oh, go fuck yourself, dude. Like, I didn't even know. I didn't even think it was a thing. I was just in college, just, doing drugs and studying astrophysics.
But it's a testament to what you can do when you've envisioned and blocked out well a few really good set pieces and a few really, really gruesome executions. Like one of my favorite executions in any movie ever is when they go in with the shotguns and shoot Benjamin, the artist.
Yes.
Perforate this guy for like 3.5 minutes as he stands there.
Yes. Yeah.
Shotgun blast after shotgun blast and not going down and just getting blasted and blasted and blasted.
And they're all scanners. And they're shooting him with shotguns. Like you would there is kind of a funny thing to that. It's just like we have our crazy psychic telepathic movie and these dudes just run around with shotguns and just shooting people. And actually, well, when they go to see like the hippie group, Kim Obrist group, and they try to kill all of them, I mean, those hippies, they set them on fire. So they're doing Scanners right.
And I'm not sure if this movie was made before or after the song Blue Oyster Cult's Flaming Telepaths, but I always think about that when they're setting each other on fire. There's a whole song written about that. But I don't know, are they scanners? Or, I mean, there's only 250 scanners in the entire world. Or are these just people like hired henchmen? Like, would a scanner have the kind of poofy red-headed afro that lady had, or would she, like, understanding humanity a little better, like maybe have a better haircut? No, I think maybe those people weren't scanners. Maybe they were hired guns that were like under the mind control of Revok, and they were just going in with shotguns because
okay.
There's only like 250 scanners, and they say they can't find most of them anymore.
See, I think that's a totally fair read because the way I read it was because when Benjamin, the artist guy, when he's talking to Vale, he's like, don't go to Revok. He'll turn you into a killing machine, a robot. So I was like, oh, so that must be kind of talking about those guys that Revok sent. Because if Vale were to have gone to him, the fear that Benjamin has is that he would become one of those. So right. I don't know though, but like, I mean, we've seen in the movie so far. This is another thing about them not establishing the rules. Like now I don't know. Like those could have been just people because we've seen Revok just take control of people. So we've seen him do that. So what's to say that wasn't the case?
He's like, by the end of the movie, it's revealed that he's running this multinational like chemical corporation, like out of fucking nowhere. So he probably has access to all kind of black ops. He probably has like Mossad connections and shit. He probably hangs out with Chuck Schumer, but. Clearly Revok has a lot of strings that he's pulling, but then at the end of the movie, he doesn't even need to pull them. He just hides behind a tree and shoots him with a fucking dart. Like, it's anticlimactic up to that point.
Yeah, and he does it himself as well. Yeah. And like you said, it is revealed that he is the head of, what is it, bio something amalgamate?
Yeah.
very Cronenberg, fucking like, no, I'm going to use the real name. I'm going to use the name of something scientific. But yeah, no, well, that was another thing when they reveal like he's like, so is he like a high profile person? Like, what are we? Is he
Yeah.
running this from the shadows? Like, because it made me think of the exhibition or the demonstration they give when he reveals himself in the beginning of the movie. I'm like, why the fuck doesn't Consec know about Revit? Like, I understand that guy, the head of security, I guess that's how they explain it. Like, oh yeah, we screened everybody, the VIP guests, we screened them, they're fine. We were very thorough. But like, is there not just like wanted posters at Consec for Revit? And then you find out like Dr. Ruth didn't tell anybody. You're like, are these people just? Is this part of the plot that they just didn't explain that there's like sort of this dissonance, this misinformation between like what Ruth is doing and what this company that funds Ruth is doing? And Ruth just decided to keep this. He's like, I'm going to keep this one close to the vest, you know?
I think that all of that, and this is a storytelling technique that, I used this a lot when I was 15 and didn't know what the fuck to write. Yeah, I'm going to play it close to the vest is actually code for I don't really know what comes next, and I'm going to keep the audience in suspense. It's a more serious version of what Douglas Adams would do. I'm just going to keep creating more ridiculous shit in front of you and laying more track and buying myself time until hopefully I can come to a conclusion with this thing.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
No, I like Scanners. You just, I say this as a fan. Like, I deeply, deeply love Scanners. I still enjoyed it. However frustrated it made me, like, I still really liked it a lot. Even coming back, it's been like probably 5 years since I've actually sat down and like watched it. But yeah, because even with all the confusing stuff, like it is so, there's just something about it. There's just something. I don't know. It's not as it's like kind of when we talked about Copland. I would say this is more egregious than Copland in terms of being like you could really start poking holes in that thing. But I still kind of just enjoy it in spite of itself almost. Like I just don't care. And I'm not really usually like that. Like I'm not the most I've people have told me that they don't like talking to me about movies because like you ruin the movies I like. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Like I don't do that on purpose.
For a movie that plays itself so straight, it doesn't need you to take it seriously.
Yeah.
There's some kind of magic in that mixture of styles that he found. And it's like, he got away with a movie that didn't make any sense because it was fucking cool. But it would have been cool if he went back and actually made a movie that was good in this world with this setup.
Yeah, give fucking Ironside like a good guy leading role. I would say like come back like 1987. Come back with Ironside from 1987 after he's kind of gotten some of his villain stuff.
With Ironside with Cameron Vale's ADR.
No, I think we just go Ironside. I think I would make an executive decision. Like it's okay, people will get it. It'll be fine. We just keep the contact lenses in.
Exactly.
Call yourself Cameron.
But yeah, man, it's despite all that, it works. You still go back to it. You still, and now that you watched it a few times, you understand what's going on. It makes more sense. All the, stylistically, it just fucking works. The language that they use, the goofy sci-fi shit. They call we have to contact Consec leader. Who the fuck is Consec leader? You know what I mean? Did he come from Mars? Like.
Oh, it's because it's full of all of these kind of like in-world colloquialisms that you just don't like have any context for. Because it's trying to be like, this is serious. These are real people, and this is how they talk, and they're business people, and
right.
This is how they are. This is, So I would, I like some of the world building. Like you said, like in a sequel, you could really explore. Because I was like thinking to myself as well. I'm like, is this a dystopia? Like, what is the state of the world right now? Do people know about scanners?
Right.
They concept kind of implies that they don't, because they're like, we decided to share with the world scanners, and that's when Michael Ironside blows that dude's head up. So I was like, well,
I feel like the world is kind of framed as a dystopia. I mean, the way that it's all colorized, and I guess it all is, most of it is like industrial scenery.
Well, that's just Canada, buddy.
Yeah, true. But, at the end of the day, it's like how much of this did David Cronenberg know that he was doing, and how much of it came together in some kind of mystical accident that ended up being the movie Scanners, that ended up being my truly horrifying. And I'm not being racist when I say that. That's a Korean misprint on my Korean bootleg of. It is truly horrifying. How much did he really know what he was doing here? And does it even matter when you can just sit down, truly make a fucking bowl of popcorn, and just watch a good horror flick with people's heads blowing up and entrails going everywhere, people getting set on fire and melting and stuff, and then Michael Ironside's over-the-top performance, his great line readings, like you said, like we were talking about, both of us had said, "I'm gonna suck your brain dry," like 15 times to ourselves today, you know.
I just love the weird ADR nature of that line where he's like, "Okay, I guess we're gonna do it the Scanner's way." Like, it's just like somebody trying to ADR a line in where that line wasn't there, so he's got to like kind of get through it really fast, trying to cram it into the mouth movement. That's what it feels like. It's like, I guess we're gonna do this the Scanner's way. I'm gonna suck your brains out. Me and you, we're gonna be inseparable, Cameron. I'm serious. I've listened to it like 50 times because I actually.
Don't you think?
Because we were gonna do this last night, and Dan, we have a hurricane rolling through the East Coast, so Dan lost power. But so I ended up just cutting together like the opening with the music and stuff, and then I grabbed that clip. I grabbed that sound bite and I just like stuck it in the front of the opening because I was like, oh, it's so cool. Everybody needs to hear that. Even if only people make it 4 minutes in, like those people, they're going to hear Michael Ironside say that.
Yes. But yeah,
I mean, and this is an early Ironside performance too. Like it's, I think he had been like 10 movies in. I have the Criterion version of the movie.
Oh, cool.
And one of the special features is just a 20-minute conversation with Michael Ironside talking about how cool he thinks Scanners is.
Oh, that's awesome. See, that's the kind of shit that I was like looking for on YouTube and I couldn't find, you know. I was looking for some shit.
The cool thing about Ironside is he is like the most down-to-earth, like working class dude. Because he didn't get famous till he was in his mid-30s. So he's like our age.
Right.
And like before that, even when he was in leads of movies, like even like Scanners, he was getting played fucking scale. So he couldn't actually survive on it. So he had to just be like a working dude. He was like a gaffer. It's like a boom operator. Go deliver food to actors.
Oh, wow.
In movies he was in. Like,
is it good? Yeah, I mean that's a real Rocky story right there.
Yeah, so he has kind of like this really down to earth notion about it, and it's really funny to hear him play. He did like a Q&A that's like somebody recorded on their cell phone about it, like from a couple years ago. It's on YouTube, but it was actually really hard to like actually just hear what he was saying. But yeah, he seems like a really just normal guy, just kind of excited that he was like a part of something people responded to.
Right.
You know, he's just like, yeah, and like even when he said a line right before he says, "I'm going to suck your brains out" thing, when Vale is like, he's like, "You're just like him. You're just like Dr. Ruth." He's like, "No, Daryl Revick." Like, he got permission to do that because he was a new actor. He asked the fucking camera operator. He didn't even ask David Cronenberg. He's like, "Do you think I should like really go for it?" And the guy's like, "Sure."
Yeah, well, the dude's sipping cold coffee and he's eating like a stale donut from yesterday's caps. Yeah, sure, yeah, go for it, dude.
Yeah. And then and he's like, "And I did it." And the guy gave me like a little nod, and I was like, "Yeah, I got something." And he did, because that, let's just talk. I think this would be a great way to end the episode. Let's just talk about the final confrontation between Vale and Revick. It has got one of my all-time favorite bad guy monologues. I mean, fucking Ironside just chewing the scenery, but not because you could tell that this is an early Ironside. Like, he doesn't know who he is in a meta sense as an actor, what people expect of him as like a Michael Ironside performance. Like, he hasn't gotten to that point in his career. So he has like this weird, like little like proper guy affect. Like this kind of like, sometimes I feel like he's going to straighten out his tie every once in a while until he explodes.
Right.
And like I think I must have seen the ending of this before I actually saw the movie. Because I mean, just the poster of like Michael Ironside with the white eyes and like freaking out, like that is obviously so iconic. And even to this day, I've probably seen Scanners like 10 times, probably in my life. Even to this day, that whole sequence just works like gangbusters. Like I have a stupid grin on my face the whole time because I like know what it took to make it, and I know like the cool special effects I'm getting to appreciate, the weird performances.
One of the last notes that I have that I haven't read was that the final confrontation is still tense and gross even after years of repeated viewings.
Yes.
And he starts just like pulling down his face, and he starts to realize that his family. You can see on his face. There's so much great face acting in this movie because it has to be people responding to telepathic like brain
Yes.
moves. And you can see the look of despair on his face as he starts to peel away pieces of his skin. And to hop further back in the movie, when the guy's head explodes in that iconic scene, the look on his face as he's losing control of the situation and beginning to panic. Everybody knocks it out of the park in the movie with their little facial expressions. But yeah, man, and the last sequence is the Howard score, the Howard Shore score. That's a tongue twister. Is like rising and pulsating, and
And the sound mix, like you said, like before that first scene with Revik when he's in the car with those guys, like that sonic, like and it just kind of keeps intensifying.
yes,
To signify the intensity of the scanner, like how hard the scanner is going at it. It actually it communicates it perfectly. It communicates it very well. Like
it
you
really
kind
does.
of without that sound there, it would probably be a little goofy, I
It would be
guess.
extremely good if it would just be people making noises at each other and like melting. But no, I think it's really. I think ultimately, even after the stumbling of the story and the kind of stealing Cameron Vale's lunch in terms of his big detective work that he's doing throughout the whole movie, and then he just gets shot with a dart. He does come to his own when he realizes all of a sudden that his scanning ability gives him something more than just a physical body. And yes, he realizes at one point when his heart starts to melt that there's no way that he can save his physical form, and now he's going to die. So he's just like, fuck it. If we're going to meld and we're going to become one, we're going to become one, but I'm going to be the one that's in control.
Yeah.
And that's a great moment for the character of Cameron Vale.
Well, it is really, and it's. If I had one criticism, is that I don't understand the stakes of that unless I'm like, I mean, you got to really be paying attention to what the fuck Revik is saying right before it happens.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
literally, he brings it up and then it happens. It's not like it's been building toward this. This is a possibility. No, Revik is like, well, we're gonna be together no matter what, Cameron. Like, you're gonna be inside of me. So which would be great sequel fodder, I guess.
It would be
Are they both in there?
fodder. Incredible sequel fodder.
Me and you, we should write Scanners too.
Yeah, like real Scanners too, with Revik living inside of, or Cameron living inside of Revik's body, or however.
Dude, we could pitch a comic book. We gotta find somebody. You could get Scanners too, the comic book, the proper sequel, the real sequel to Scanners.
And when we finally get the contract, and the checks are cut, and everything is gravy, and it's finally been published, I'm gonna get on Skype with contacts in. I'm gonna come out from underneath the trench coat, and I'm gonna go, "We've won.
Yeah, we've won.
We've won."
Don't worry, Kim, it's me, Cameron. I actually, I do, even because I would say there's no real sequel to Scanners. Those other movies are just like, I watched one of them so far, and
They're like that Christmas movie where Santa Claus is like what is it, Santa's sleigh or whatever. Like, I look at the sequels to Scanners on the same level as like Christmas horror movies.
oh, good pull. That's true. Yeah, because they're about that quality. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense that they would have made like 27 of them and not actually just at least one.
It's so frustrating, Dan, because like you watch them and you're like, why didn't you just fucking continue the story of Scanners? Like Scanners on their own, a scanner is not that cool. It's everything surrounding a scanner that makes it interesting. So when you just have scanners that just like, because they become like kind of like X-Men almost.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, look what this scanner can do, and look what this scanner can do, and they escalate things that way. And oh, of course, oh, there's a doctor in a corporation, and they just kind of keep that, and that's all there is.
It
And
seems like they take the seed of the scanner concept and then do like a Sam Hyde Sam Hyde McDonald's Rush skit where he's like, ooh, let me get 2 quarter pounders and and an empanada, please, and a couple of coffees and a frosty, and it's just like yeah, we have scanners, and now we have to have a new world order, and now we have to have the scanner cop, and now we have to have the scanner cop too. It's just like, dude, it could have been so good without those stupid gimmicks.
well, because they just basically took like the last line of that final or one of the last lines of the final confrontation, be like, we're gonna take over the world, Cameron, me and you, we're gonna be in the world, and then they were just like, that's what the scanners want to do. And you're like, no, because even if I was making a sequel 10 years later for fucking Showtime, I'd have been like, no, we recast, whatever. Yeah, Michael Ironside is not going to be in our fucking $2 million Showtime movie. I gotcha. But we're just going to recast, and we just continue the story.
Right,
like,
because the story is powerful, has a great history.
I can't even imagine being, like, if I was younger, if I was like 15 when the first Scanners comes out, and then I'm 25 when Scanners 2 comes out, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a Scanners 2 coming out? No way. And then watching Scanners 2, I probably would have threw my fucking TV through the window. No, get this away from me.
Yeah, man, and it sucks that there was no more to explore. I think you said that you were gonna like hook me up with Scanner sequels, and then you just were like, "No, I'm not gonna." Why would I even bother with the postage?
Next time you get a mass package, when I've collected enough to send you 5 or 10 things, oh, it'll be in there, Dan. That's freezer material.
Actually, yeah, I would watch Scanner Cop while I vacuum
Well,
seal.
Scanner Cop is on YouTube. I cannot find a copy of Scanner Cop. It's on YouTube though. And then
You know what, dude? That's where it deserves to be.
And Scanners 2 and 3, there's an app called Tubi, which is like you could watch it there with ads if you have an Xbox. So I'm pretty sure the Tubi's on Xbox. Scanners 2 and 3 are on there. You just have to watch it with commercials.
Oh, got it.
That's the kicker. I don't know if it's worth it, but like I said, didn't even finish the second one. I fell asleep, so I'll get to it. There'll be a daily video of me talking about Scanners 2 and 3. I'm
Nice.
sure
I'll be looking forward to those and make some kind of stupid comment on the comments about how I'm going to suck your brains out.
Dan makes the best comments, actually. I appreciate the interaction. I really do. And like I told you, Dan, trust me. Listen, I'm trying to, I'm not going to let women on Zoobox just willy-nilly. Zoobox is for men. Dude, you know what's funny? Like 4 people literally sent me a message and being like, yo, a girl on Zoobox? I was like, yeah, it's my wife.
It was perfect because the material you were talking about was like simping material.
I know. That's why it was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
And I thought of that, and she suggested it, and I even say in the episode we did, I was like, I was a little hesitant to like put my family in Zoobox because I don't.
It's a Zoobox.
Because I was like, I cannot control what I say sometimes. My brother Dan has very confused opinions.
I want to go on to one of your political Zooboxes and get into a debate with your brother with a lot of alcohol involved.
Oh, we could do that. We will do that. Trust me. Like when you get off of because I know you got a big workload coming up. Maybe after that we'll plan something.
Someone that's cozy in the wintertime.
Yeah, there you go. Get some bourbon and some hot cocoa and sit next to the fireplace, and we'll have a good old fashioned something. Or maybe you could call into I think we're gonna, a little preview for everybody at home. I think we're gonna all actually literally be in the same place for election night, and we're gonna live stream election night.
That's gonna be good.
Yeah, so we're gonna, and then we're gonna do what we do, which is, drink too much and fucking say awful things.
I mean, I might have to, if you have a live line, I might have to call in and.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, we're gonna try to work it out. We're figuring out the details right now, like trying to figure out how to do like election night with Zoobox.
That's incredible.
But it'll be a good time. It won't be as good as the time as watching Scanners, though. If you've never seen this movie, if you've made it this far, go watch Scanners. The journey is more exciting than the destination, I can tell you that. So we have not really spoiled any substance for you, because you're going to have to watch Scanners and try to make sense of it yourself.
Right.
Scanners is going to mean, it's like a Rorschach test. It could probably mean anything you want it to mean. You can project a lot onto the story of Scanners. But it's the thing that gave Cronenberg his juice, and I'll always be thankful for that, because he made, right after this, he makes one of my all-time favorite movies, Videodrome, which you need to see, buddy.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely one. If you ever watch Videodrome, you tell me, and we will definitely do a Videodrome episode, because that is a Dan Proffit movie.
Yes, and as I said on my buddy Tim's comment when he suggested The Fly, I plan on doing one of these every month with you until we die. So we got a lot of movies, got a lot of movies to cover.
Yeah, I think there's no shortage of that stuff. So, do you have any final comments you want to leave the world with before you?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. I mean, Scanners is an aesthetically pleasing, dark, gruesome, dystopian, psychological body horror movie, and it's just cool to watch. If you're looking for any deeper substance, I don't know, go watch The fucking Fly or something.
Yeah, I would say, like, out of every Cronenberg movie, this is his most straightforward, which is a weird thing to say after talking about what we've talked about. But all of his other movies are like weird psychosexual ideologies warring against each other. That's why I can't wait till you watch Videodrome, because Videodrome is about like this weird. Basically, it's very prescient. It's like almost like kind of what we go through today in terms of like propaganda and ideologies and how those things are formed and who's controlling who, and it's very interesting. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. And if you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for our Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. I don't use Twitter a ton, but sometimes I go on there and talk about movies or make some sort of weird off-color joke. And if you'd like to make a recommendation for any of the daily videos that you see, or even a Zoobox Goes to the Movies in the future, drop it in the comments and we'll put it on the list. I don't know when we'll get around to it, but if it is worthy of consideration, it will be considered. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate you coming on, man.